following will contain some spoilers for certain fantasy films. You have been warned. Hello everyone! Welcome back to another segment of Dragon videos. I know it's been a while since you guys last heard from me, and I thought it would be a great time to do a special segment and a special list because this video is my 100th video. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 100th video that I've made so far since I made my channel. And I hope to make more in the future, and I'd also like to thank my subscribers for supporting this channel. Remember, I really appreciate the support. Anyway, I'm going to go over a special list involving fantasy films. We've always cherished fantasy since when it was first introduced. We loved the stories of fighting villains, going through mystical lands, and interacting with wondrous creatures, and doing magic. So for this list, I'm going over some of the best fantasy films, mostly due to how they represent in a story or what makes them stand out from the rest. Bear in mind, these are just my opinions alone and you don't have to agree with them, but here they are. So, if you're a big fan of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, this would seem like an ideal for you, in more ways than one. So this story focuses on Snow White. Her appearance isn't very appreciated to many people when they don't know her title. And as she is hiding from her stepmother, she soon comes across her father's diary, regaling the tale of how everything happened by letting a mysterious sorceress into their lives, or well, technically a witch. But anyway, when she comes across those magical pair of shoes, she instantly transforms and is whisked away to soon encounter 7 dwarves who are actually cursed men, 7 heroic heroes known as the Heroic 7, I believe. Forgive me if I'm forgetting the name here. Anyway, these 7 are cursed until they learn to love and appreciate the other individual and get that love in return. And amongst them is Merlin, Snow White's interest. Merlin has a tendency to focus on what's considered ugly and what is considered beautiful, and has a horrible time differing between the two, especially because he suffers some self-loathing through his power. Not only that, but they also have to deal with Prince Average, though people taunt him and call him Prince Average, and a very annoying character in more ways than one. So, during that entire time, though, Red Shoes has to deal with the fact that she has to keep her appearance a secret from her stepmother until she can find some answers, as well as Merlin having to learn to deal with his curse and trying to find someone to break that spell. So throughout that time, Snow White has to keep on that special image of Red Shoes in order to interact with people and get something to go on. It's not that she hates herself or that she's incapable of loving herself, it's just she's going along with what the world is. And this is definitely where I feel like Red Shoes can be a very interesting take on Snow White, because it kind of focuses on what it means of having positive self-love as well as being valued inside as well as outside. And even the chemistry between Merlin and Red Shoes is very sweet and special, and reminds us of how to love ourselves as much as we possibly can. It's never easy, but with our society, it could help do that. But I put it at number 10 because I do wish they expand a little bit more in terms of how the magic worked and what could possibly done in terms of plot. Another Snow White retelling, which I feel like is more epic and worth mentioning, especially for some of you who are into the grim version of Snow White. So, like the previous Snow White, it definitely focuses on the father unknowingly bringing in an evil sorceress into his castle and causing heck whenever possible, thus resulting in the queen ruling over everyone with an iron fist while sucking up their beauty. Along the way, Snow White soon encounters the huntsman who tries to kill her, but soon has to reluctantly pair up with him in order to stop the evil queen from ruling forevermore and stealing whatever beauty remains with all the fair maidens of the land. Also joined by 7 dwarves, Snow White has to go head-to-head in creating an army that would rise and rebel against the queen. And along with doing so, she slowly gains power. Of course, I feel like putting it in here because the epic sequence is amazing, and the fantasy world is almost spooky, beautiful, and terrifying, which is probably something that the Grimm brothers have probably imagined for some time since the beginning. This one may be a forgotten classic. Lady Hawk is a huge love story that is never told before. It focuses on a heroic knight and a young maiden who are both cursed to take on a specific form. For this woman, it's in the daytime as a hawk, while under the light of the moon, the knight turns into a ferocious wolf. In order to break the curse, the two have to rely on a thief who has a good sense of consciousness, while at the same time a priest who have to both take on an evil bishop. They use the powers of dark forces to curse the two, forcing them to go into an endless cycle of one facing the other, but only during the time of a solar eclipse. Lady Hawk is definitely one of those epic fantasies where you are slowly piecing together what's going on in the story, up to the point where you don't have so much explanation. You're just enjoying the emotional and crazy ride of two lovers trying to break their curse. Fun fact, this popular film is actually based on an old novel called The Last Unicorn, and also had a sequel. Anyway, this film was also introduced into a Japanese-influenced animation way before it was a thing. Anyway, this story focuses on a young unicorn who soon learns that her kind has disappeared, banished from the human world. Curious, the unicorn soon decides to go on this journey to figure out where her kind has been taken. Along the way, she encounters 2 reliable humans, a sorcerer a magician named Schmedrick, and a maid which I believe is Molly. It's been a while since I've seen this one. Anyway, she soon finds out the truth that she encounters the Red Bull. And no, it's not that energetic drink. This nightmare fuel that you see before you is the Red Bull, a thing of hate and undescribable magic that really puts us all in a state of terror. It's made by King Haggard himself to force the unicorns into the ocean to forever be his tools of amusement. This forces the unicorn, who goes by the name of Mafia later on in the story, take on human form and live among King Haggard and his adopted son Lear. Along the way, this definitely gives off a sense of struggle for the unicorn, of learning of what it means to be human, what it means to have actual emotions, as well as trying to have some sense of respect for her friends. Of course, some people may have some issues with the unicorn because of how she is not as compassionate, or sometimes may come off as a jerk and high and mighty attitude, especially toward her reliable wizard friend. And it's not exactly her fault. For her, human emotions is very difficult to understand. And she is so used to being in the forest all her life, it's hard for her to interact. And so, I put this here because the story is just amazing and the animation is purely breathtaking, especially in today's standard animation. And I really hope that there'll be more in the future. Another great fantasy movie classic. Well, before its third sequel, and then it got a little annoying. Anyway, the Neverending Story is really heartfelt and also introduces Fantasia, a fantasy world of its own, very special. So it focuses on a story named Bastian Bucks, who recently lost his mother and is struggling with day-to-day life, and comes across this book through a magical bookstore, and thus follows the story of a young warrior boy named Atreyu, who had to go through perilous wonders of Fantasia in order to save the world from the nothing, a very empty void of what is the lack of an imagination that people have. It was finally up to that point where he needed help from a childlike empress, and along the way he soon learns about Bastian's special powers. One of the reasons why I put it further down the list is because of the hidden symbolism that the Neverending Story has about dealing with grief and moving on, as well as introducing us to a world that is filled with wonder and terrifying danger that we even find ourselves fearing for Atreyu, as well as giving us a nice reflection to how Bastian feels throughout the majority of the story. However, it's probably not as well remembered, especially because, again, most people will probably want to forget the third film that existed and may not be able to easily associate the first one that was always a beloved classic. If you wanted a little bit more of an Asian fantasy, Kubo and the Two Strings might be an ideal one, made by the same people who did Coraline and the Fox Trolls. On a young boy named Kubo, a young boy who is missing one eye due to mysterious circumstances, and it has to be raised by his mother in order to survive, as well as having forced to take care of her because of her injury when they first arrived. But one tragic night, when he decided to visit his father, things took a turn for the worst, and thus he has to rely on the power of his magical paper abilities, as well as having the assistance of a wise monkey who definitely comes off as very stern, though she very is kind to Kubo at that point, as well as getting the reluctant assistance from a strange and crazy beetle warrior who doesn't seem to really remember much of his past at the time. The three join forces in order to take down Kubo's grandfather, a mysterious moon god who wants nothing more than to gain immortality, and wanted to do so by removing Kubo's humanity, whatever means necessary. Throughout this film, I feel like Kubo definitely seals the deal in terms of having an introduction of Asian cultures about loving cherished ones, the concept of reincarnations, and moving forward, even though it will never be easy, and in life, nothing ever is. Dragonheart is probably one of the few dragon-based movies, the very first one that people would ever remember or ever associate with dragons that aren't going to be fire-breathing, treasure-stealing pests that are out to kill you. In this one, it's an interesting story about a dragon who literally gives half of his heart to an injured prince. And several years later, the dragon, going by the name Draco, bonds with Bowen, a knight who was hell-bent on trying to destroy all of dragonkind after what had happened all those years ago, with the prince, now fully healed by the half of his dragon heart, taking over the kingdom that his father once had. And he believed that the heart of the dragon corrupted the prince, so Bowen, the knight of the old code, decided to go and hunt them down, and apparently in doing so resulted in these two forever uniting and raising against the prince. And in a lot of ways, you feel so fascinated with Draco, because he is humanizing, but yet at the same time, he is still a beastly creature of ancient times. Even the lore of this world is pretty fascinating and very simple to follow, especially when you learn the backstory of how the dragons came to be and willing to help out mankind. But you could sort of say that thanks to the jerk of a prince, it was the major result of the backlash of trying to unite humankind with the dragons. You really feel bad for Draco. He tried to fix everything he could and thought his heart would change the prince because he knew of the dark and spoiled nature of him, which blew up in his face. In a lot of ways, Dragonheart is one of those cherished fantasy stories about sacrifice and what it means to try to get redeemed again. And not only do you feel bad for Draco, but you also feel bad for Bowen, who thought he was mentoring the prince, but was also blind to that dark nature. Their friendship is like something before Hiccup and Toothless were a thing. If any of you wanted a paranormal romance involved with dragons, I feel like this would seem like an ideal one for you. This one is actually Russian with a bit of English subtitles, but the main story is a very interesting fantasy romance that you probably haven't seen before. So, to clarify, this story focuses on a young girl, or well, technically a young princess, I guess you could sort of say, who is the daughter of a duke, who was going to get married to the grandson of a famous dragon slayer that supposedly got rid of all the dragons in the world. However, she finally finds herself being whisked away by the one creature they feared the most, and soon comes across Amir, I believe. Anyway, Amir definitely comes off as very quiet and a little bit withdrawn, But he has this amazing obsession with puppetry and has a very heavy secret laid on him that is connected to the dragon. Not only that, but they're actually living on the bones of a dead dragon. So for some of you who are Owl House fans, this is not the first time that sort of happened. Anyway, there's this phenomenal transformation you see on this island. It comes off as eerie and frightening, but then begins to have a more cheery tune as the show progresses. Not only that, but the romance between Mira and Amir is very special. It's up to the point now where she was willing to open herself and give herself away to the dragon. And even the song that they sing at the beginning of a movie comes off as very eerie and frightening, but then turns very beautiful and harmonious and willing. And in a lot of ways, I loved the dragon design as much as I did Draco's. It's somewhat human, but still also has a beastly center, where you kind of sympathize with these poor creatures because the fear is the only thing they've ever known. And with Mira, they're attracted to them because she may be a female human who has never treated them more than they are now. And this kind of revolutionizes a sense of hope that nothing was thought possible. So I feel like overall this feels like a really good film, especially for some of you who are Beauty and the Beast fans. It's different. If a romance is something that's very interesting and healthy, as well as going as far as giving off a sense of hope and in some ways showing some symbolism of what it means to have a beautiful and wonderful relationship.
Yes, a quite remarkable movie that definitely deserves a number 2 spot. How about we move on to number 1 now, shall we?
Artemis, we are not going to discuss this, but put it on the list and we're going to talk about it.
Do we really have to discuss about this topic?
Artemis!
It happens every time you do.
Artemis!
Fine.
Not many of you would be too surprised if I put this film on the list. Dark Crystal was one of Jim Henson's best fantasy films outside the Muppet and Sesame Street industry. Anyway, this story focuses on a young gelfling named Jen, who journeys across Thra in order to save the dying world from the Skeksis, a vicious, bird-like race who are hell-bent in trying to restore their eternal youth and their eternal life so they can rule the world forever. Along the way, he also encounters some power struggle. Not directly, but we definitely get the hint of that when the Emperor is crumpled to dust, and thus his death resulted in a struggle between 3 Skeksis. Ultimately, the Chamberlain lost, but he came up with a very cunning plan in order to win back the favor. Along the way, Jen is also aided by the Uru as well as Mother Orgra, figuring out his destination and finding the crystal that needs to be restored before the conjunction is at hand, as well as being aided by Kira, another Gelfling survivor. One of the things I like about this film is just how different it is from other fantasy films. It's a world of its own, and the puppetry was very advanced during its time. The movement so fluid and organic, and before advanced computer technology, we definitely saw the puppets being more alive than we ever thought was possible, and that's very rare in today's society. And this film has been insanely popular over the years, gaining a cult following up to the point where its popularity finally led into Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, the prequel to how all of this horrific massacre and Jen's journey began, and how all the Skeksis and the Uru came as they are. I feel like I put it in number 2 because this is probably an underrated gem that needs more attention more than ever, especially after what Netflix had done to the show. So it feels like, in a lot of ways, this is one of the best films ever, but there's just 2 films in the number 1 that deserved more love. No surprise that this would be on number 1 on the list, or actually 2, I should say. Song of the Sea is one of the fantasy films that focuses on the concepts of dying tradition and trying to keep memories alive. It focuses on a story named Ben, who risks everything in his power to save Saoirse, his Selkie sister, from a certain demise. At first, he didn't exactly have very high opinions of his sister, mostly because he kind of blamed her for his mother's death, which we all know isn't exactly very fair on Saoirse's part. And along the way, he goes through an emotional journey of what it means to move forward but hold on to the memories of his mother through the stories that he was told. In a lot of ways, if you noticed, a lot of the characters that Ben mentions or interacts with is a lot similar to the people, and I even made a mention of the symbolism that is hidden throughout this entire film. And I put it number 1 because it's not only just gorgeously animated, but the story is well thought out and relatable, and definitely incorporates all the Irish mythology that comes into play and maybe not many people have an appreciation for. And then there's Wolfwalkers, another great film that's just been recently nominated last year for 2020. And it was an appropriate time because it discussed about the concepts of fear and what it really means to be free. So this focuses on the story of a young girl named Robin who lives with her father in the 1650s in the Irish town of Kilkenny when it was still ruled over by the Protector or Lord Protector of Ireland, which for some of you is actually Cromwell. Not Cromwell, but Old Ironsides is another name that he goes by. Anyway, this guy wants to wage war on nature itself because he viewed it as bad and the force of the devil itself. But soon, everything changes when Robin encounters Mabe, a wolfwalker, a human who has the capability of taking on the form of a wolf when going to sleep, which is both good and bad in terms of that strategy. And upon being bitten by a wolfwalker, Robin's whole world was turned upside down as she witnesses the powers firsthand. And upon doing so, she finds freedom in nature through being with Maeve. She finally finds herself a sense of happiness that she never have dreamt of in forever. And thus, because of that realization, she was forced to take a stand against her father, the Lord Protector, and everything that she once believed in order to save her friend, her mother, and also the wolves that she once was forced to hunt. Again, is so much symbolism in this film, and also great animation and wonderful emotional storytelling. And in a lot of ways, both of these films are not only from a foreign country, from Ireland, but also gives us a fresh, different story that we have badly needed in the fantasy film industry for a very long time. So folks, this is my thoughts on these videos, and I want to hear yours. Do a like, subscribe, and also feel free to tell us what your favorite fantasy film is. I hope you've enjoyed this 100th video, and thank you for supporting me. This is Dragon Videos, signing off.